Good evening, y'all, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful and happy Thursday. Welcome to another great episode of Mason Dixon Podcast with y'all's host, Cousin Vinny. I figured I'd do something cool, with the spirit of Christmas, and don't know if any of y'all feel the same way, but it feels like Christmas is absolutely flying by. It is one of those holidays where, with Thanksgiving being so late in the year, everything is kind of cramped in there. So, further ado, let's get started with our usual little disclaimer. Views and opinions expressed here on Mason Dixon Podcast and on MAD our own and just our own views, and they do not represent the views and opinions of any other person, group, or organization. Remember, y'all, that stars help us put up statues. For those of y'all that want to donate some money, please donate some stars, and it makes a big difference. All right, y'all. So I decided that I was going to start doing a series of programs, and I do apologize if this is kind of a short one today because I've been working on dissertation stuff. But I put together several small programs, and they're all about Christmas because that's really what tends to be an interesting topic for people around this time of year. People want to know more about Christmas, where it originated. There's a lot of myths about Christmas, what it is, what it ain't, all that. And really, when you look at Dixie and especially the southern states, a lot of those states are highly influenced by, the true history of America. And when it comes to, the colonies and the British influence, Dixie's always been big on maintaining those trends and those, beautiful, homey feels versus, going into New York City. And it's almost no culture there when it comes to Christmas, other than the tree that is an annual thing that's like their big thing up there. But if y'all go to any well-kept southern town, you got the beautiful memorial. I know in Georgia, some of the wonderful SCV camps out there and UDC chapters will decorate their memorials for Christmas. I've seen that, and I love that when they put Christmas lights on it. My buddy Jude that's on here, he does that with his SCV camp. And really, it's just a time of just, celebration, obviously honoring Christ first, but, families, then coming families, then heritage. So in order to really understand Christmas in Dixie, I think it's important to really cover the early origins of it and where it really started. So Christmas has been going on for quite some time. Obviously, we know the birth of Christ, but let's go beyond that. And when did Christmas start looking a little bit more like we see it today? Well, Victorian and Edwardian era are two very prominent eras that were, where Christmas starts to take on a different, view, or rather how it looked. And it looks more similar to how it's celebrated today. So the Victorian era, he writes in the 1800s, and it ends right at the early 1900s. The Edwardian era follows right after the Victorian era. And both eras are similar, but obviously the Victorian era is inspired by Queen Victoria. And right there, some of y'all might be wondering, who is that stunning young lady in that portrait? Well, that's Queen Victoria. And a quick note of history right there is that Queen Victoria was a very short woman. A lot of people look at her portraits and think she's a lot taller. And, if any of y'all ever seen what she looked like in her, her later life, she does not look anything like the portraits. So obviously back in the day, if you wanted a picture, you had to sit there for long periods of time. You would have your artist basically do some modern day photoshopping. A lot of those artists knew how to make you look better, look touched up, and all that. So Queen Victoria obviously used some Photoshop. She was 4'11". She was not very tall at all. But Prince Albert, her husband, who she was very close with, both of them were pivotal in really making Christmas the way it is today. So everything from using the Christmas trees and how they're all lit up and the family celebrations and the caroling, that's all very big in the Victorian era. So what you're seeing in the Victorian era is definitely strong values of faith, family, tradition. When you go into the Edwardian era, you're starting to get a mix of old world traditions, and you get a lot of evolving traditions. And this is also going to change with the use of marketing, communications, and advertising. And that's just a little example on the right of what a Christmas tree would look like in the Victorian era. But really, if we go beyond the Victorian era, let's just take a look at some of the artwork right at the time. here you see like a happy family, and this is what was portrayed. So there's Queen Victoria on the left, there's Prince Albert on the right, and there's some of their children, and the family looks moderately happy. Now, when y'all study the royal family, especially Queen Victoria, she was known for being a little temperamental at times. Maybe it's sometimes having a really bad temper towards children. So was this really accurate? Probably not. But look at just how pristine that looked. And that really reflects the Victorian era and how perfection was definitely a big factor of it. The Christmas tree had these early ornaments on it. Some of them were hand carved with wood. A lot of them were painted. These are beautiful ornaments. Some of them might be biblical. Some of them might be just of the town. And ornaments around this time would often be sold. So right here is another way that things would get marketed. And the Christmas trees were a little bit different than today. They maybe weren't as, they weren't farmed like they were today in the sense that they all looked perfect. Some of them had a lot of flaws. There could also be a lot of issues with getting a Christmas tree and there being some animals in it. So you could have an owl or something like that in there, maybe a chipmunk. And oftentimes you would decorate the Christmas tree. We didn't have lights back then, candle lights, which is very dangerous and absolutely could start a fire. So the impact of England and Germany were absolutely pivotal when it came to celebrating Christmas, especially Germany. Germany was probably the #1 country where a lot of our modern day Christmas traditions occurred, and how they became very popular was, let's go back here. The way the royal family was viewed in the Victorian era was one that was very prominent. The British Empire was a very strong force. They owned a lot of areas around the world. During the age of, imperialism, they controlled a lot of islands, a lot of places. People looked up and they respected Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, and they always looked towards the royal family for the current trends. So just like today, how some people would go to like People magazine or the tabloids or all that, all the focus was on the royal family. And today that's sort of fallen out of fashion for the most part. I mean, down south, there still is that influence where the ladies do have a lot of similar traditions that are common in England, because England does hold on to their traditions. A lot of the ladies back then would wear their hats and the gloves and all that, and they would have afternoon tea and Christmas tea and all that, and that still occurs in a lot of places, especially the higher end areas of Dixie. So what people do is they see Victoria, she's celebrating with a tree. Well, where do I get a Christmas tree? I want one too. Well, you have the beautiful Georgia pines. Where can I buy a tree like this? In most cases, people will go out there, chop one down, and they would decorate it. If they had money, they could do that. All right, and back to Germany. So in the 16th century, that's when you really see trees being common. A lot of German Christians would bring trees into their home, and they would decorate them. They would celebrate the holiday with many families. They would build pyramids of wood. They would decorate them with evergreens if the wood was scarce. So if you couldn't bring in a full-on tree, you could kind of make your own, and kind of like our version of a fake tree, more or less. And then you have in the 16th century, for those that don't know, who knows the name of this person on the right? Give you all 3 seconds. Martin Luther. He was a Protestant reformer. And some historians ponder this, but they believe that Martin Luther was actually the first person to, quote, light up their Christmas tree. So before anyone says, wait, he had electricity back then? No, he used candles. Again, a fire hazard. And please do not ever try this at home. So that's an idea of what a Christmas tree would look like, especially more towards the late Victorian era, maybe early Edwardian era. You would have, little streamers on the tree, sometimes popcorn. There would be ornaments all on there. And with the tree, you'd have maybe some spices and spiced fruits hanging on there. So it would smell really good. Just like that song, it's beginning to smell a lot like Christmas. You had fruits, you had cloves, you had all these beautiful smells and aromas, and the evergreen and the mintiness. All of that was very common in the Victorian home. Everything was just wonderful, and it really impacted the senses. And you could maybe smell some of the burning candle wax. Hopefully no burning trees. But right there on the tree, they would go around, they'd put candles on it, and they would light the tree up. Nowadays, we use Christmas lights, and even then, it's not 100% safe. Still, every year, Christmas tree fires are usually a very big cause of fires during Christmas time and December. And kind of, looking at looking at this with an approach of then and now, even some of the fake, candles, halogen light bulbs, if anyone would go to the Christmas tree shop or TJ Maxx, I could say that many times a lot of those items, because I've worked there before, would be returned or recalled. And the reason being is that sometimes it was faulty electric, but more often than not, a lot of the factories would make the light bulbs with halogen bulbs. And the problem with halogen bulbs is while they give a beautiful, pure white light, they also give a lot of heat. And the heat that's generated from a halogen bulb, if a Christmas tree is dry and not watered, that's how a lot of Christmas tree fires happen, it causes the tree to go right up in flames. And that's why even by today's standards, we've come a long way. But there are still risks to using the Christmas lights that are not safe or not approved. There's a lot of ways to, prevent Christmas tree fires. And I always just say, do y'all's research and decide what y'all want to put in your Christmas tree light-wise. We use ours that are LEDs. I've known people that will even get a projector and it just shoots, lights on the tree. So I thought that was pretty cool, researching this and learning about this because, Martin Luther, he's known for a lot of other things, but when would y'all ever imagine Martin Luther being known for being the first to light up a Christmas tree with lights? And because of Germany too, this is the flag on the left. It was the German flag in the mid 1800s. Of course, Germany's flag changes countless times throughout history. Sometimes there was the bird, and then that's the modern, German flag with black, red, and yellow. So we're going to also be discussing some other things that occurred in Germany too, because it was really big. But we're also going to talk a little bit about the Advent calendars. So Germans invented the first Advent calendar. And what this was originally, I don't have a picture, but my historical society does this every year. It would be on the fireplace, almost like tinsel. It'd be a very long line of cloth bags, small pouches, probably about... I thought I had one. Probably about yay big, more or less. And on the front of each pouch, there would be a number, and the number would correspond to the day. So, for example, 1 through 25, December 1st. What families would do is they'd let their children take a bag off, they'd open them up, and inside each bag would be a small little gift or a snack. So it could be maybe a little wooden carved figure. It could be maybe some herbs. It could be maybe some nuts or fruits or anything like that. And it was just a nice little way of, being thankful and just kind of, getting the countdown towards Christmas in a fun and exciting way for the family. And really, as a lot of y'all know, Advent calendars today, we have fun ones. There's ones that are for adults. There's ones that are for children, ones for teens. And they're usually very small. And they have those cute little wooden or cardboard doors. And inside each one will be a little chocolate or something like that. I remember growing up as a kid, we always looked forward to the ones that had the chocolates. And if y'all were really lucky, you get the one that had Reese's Pieces in it, and it was delicious. So as the ones on the fireplace, the little sacks changed, you then got wooden boards. And the cool thing with wooden boards is, hey, it's family fun if you all work together to make it. It's reusable every year. Just, fill it on up. And eventually, as we get into the modern era with marketing and all that, Gerhard Lang was credited with creating the modern day one with the cardboard doors, the ones that we see in most stores and all that. So let's talk about some drinks, because that's another good part of, fun part of Christmas. So right here is a well-known portrait that we're going to talk a little bit about. So really common during Christmas time, especially in Germany and the Victorian era and England, is mulled wine, eggnog, and punch. So eggnog was even drank as far back as colonial America. A very important drink, and I know that some of the older taverns that know their history will actually have George Washington's recipe. The Robert E. Lee cookbook has a very good recipe that the Lee family made, and I make that every year for my Christmas parties. So let's talk a little bit about West Point. So for those that don't know, West Point for its time in the 1800s was the go-to military school. It was well known. It was in New York, and they were known for being strict, but being very effective with generating, strong troops and strong military officials. Well, with West Point, they took a very strict approach to drinking. There was a no tolerance alcohol policy in West Point. Simply drinking or getting drunk would warrant an expulsion. Tobacco was held to a lesser standard, where usually if somebody was caught with tobacco or smoking, that was usually something that was punishable by demerits, not necessarily, expulsion, because expulsion usually was very serious. And think about today, how little that's changed. And a lot of boarding schools, if students drink, or even military schools, y'all will be severely punished or potentially expelled. And eggnog is a delicious drink that includes egg products and a little bit of rum and all that. And it is a delicious drink. The downside is that too much of it can cause some pretty erratic behavior. So it was also called the Grog Mutiny. It took place on December 24th and 25th in 1826. And it was caused by a drunken Christmas party that went awry in the northern barracks of the academy. So what they did before the riot, 2 days prior, a large quantity of whiskey was smuggled into the academy to make the eggnog. So the students had to get together. They had to formulate this. They had to plan this out. It was not something that was done, overnight. So the old recipe was milk, cream, and they would add whiskey to it, sometimes sherry, brandy. They'd add a significant amount. So here's the timeline of it. On December 22nd, 1826, at Martin's Tavern, cadets William Burnley from Alabama, Alexander Center from New York, and Samuel Alexander Roberts from Alabama, they almost got into a fight with the proprietors of another tavern concerning getting whiskey back to the West Point. Private James Dugan, the duty security guard, agreed to let the three cadets take a boat across the Hudson to smuggle the whiskey. The cadets planned to purchase 1/2 gallon of whiskey as an alcoholic base for the eggnog party that would take place in the northern barracks 2 nights later. Philip St. George from Virginia was the 24-hour duty cadet card of the day. Burnley Center and Roberts successfully obtained 2 gallons of whiskey, smuggling them into the northern barracks, room number 33. Cadet T.M. Lewis from Kentucky also returned with 1 gallon of rum from Benny's Tavern to the North Barracks, room number 5. Next, on December 23rd, 1826, Thayer met with George Bumford from New York and Robert E. Lee from Virginia. Bumford was questioned about the parental correspondence by Thayer, while Lee questioned Thayer about trigonometry problems for an artillery gunnery. Class and barracks were inspected and continued as usual throughout the day. So right off the bat, of course, we have General Lee. He's all concerned about, hey, all work, no play, no drink. Lee, as y'all know, was very by the book, very Christian. He did not deviate at all, nor even let his mind go awry. As the Christmas party took place at Thayer's residence, which wine was served, Reverend Charles McIlvin, the Academy chaplain, was among the attendees. During a conversation in church between Thayer and Major William J. Worth, the Commandant of Cadets, about Jefferson Davis's Mississippi's his disciplinary problems. Entertainment was provided by the West Point Band. The party ended at 21:30. At 18 o'clock, 4 cadets, Walter B. Guyon from Mississippi, Davis, John Stocker from Pennsylvania, and David Farley from Pennsylvania, met at Benny Haven's Tavern. Most of the discussion was about everyday life among the cadets. They left before the Academy quartermaster, Aeneas Mackay, arrived. Meanwhile, at the Northern Barracks, cadets were planning the party. Preparations included stealing bits and pieces of food during their visits to the mess hall, and during this time, cadets residing in the South Barracks found out about the North Barracks' planned Christmas party. So what's happening now, y'all? Oh, we have bits and pieces, just like y'all see in the movies. The students had to get creative. They are coming together to put together this elaborate Christmas party. So, the day of the infamous incident, the 24th and 25th of December, 1826. Nathaniel Eaton from Massachusetts was the cadet in charge of the external post of the North Barracks. Captain Ethan Allen Hitchcock, a faculty member in the military tactics area, was also stationed in the North Barracks. Eaton and Hitchcock met and discussed the smuggled liquor in the North Barracks. The eggnog party started among 9 cadets in the North Barracks, room 28. Numerous cadets appeared as the party progressed, while another party began in room number 5, mentioned by 7 cadets, including Davis. Farrelly went again to North's and returned with another gallon of whiskey early on Christmas morning. Cadet Charles Whipple from the Michigan Territory, the division superintendent during the first part of the incident, went to the North Barracks, room number 5 at 2 o'clock. After hearing a commotion interrupting a round of singing among 8 cadets, including Davis, Whipple returned to his room after a verbal exchange with Davis and other cadets. Hitchcock made another patrol around the barracks at 3 o'clock. Lieutenant William A. Thornton was also asleep when the events unfolded. By 4 o'clock, voices from another floor above Hitchcock were loud enough to cause the faculty members to investigate room number 28, where Hitchcock knocked on the door and found 6 cadets drunk from the eggnog, as well as 2 others sleeping on a bed. Hitchcock ordered 2 of the cadets back to their rooms after they left. So after they left, Hitchcock woke the 2 sleeping cadets and ordered them to leave as well. Then he confronted Cadet James W.M. Weems Barron from Georgia, who responded with equal force. Hitchcock gave a stern lecture to the residents of the room for possessing alcohol on the premises. The captain left the room at 4:15. Barron began verbalizing his rage towards Hitchcock, which led William Dixie, a.k.a. Billy Murdoch from the District of Columbia, to lead an effort to organize a riot against Hitchcock. So right here, there's this whole argument and snaring in there, it's starting to get violent. Person probably has the worst hangover of his life. Then we come to December 25th, 1826. So Hitchcock went down to his room to sleep. 3 times he heard knocks on the door, only to find no one there. Finding another cadet drunk. Hitchcock saw Davis head over to room number 5, where 13 cadets were partying. Davis, seeing Hitchcock's arrival, warned the other cadets that Hitchcock was on his way. The captain entered the room, ordering one of the cadets to open the other cadet's footlocker, but the cadet refused. Hitchcock ordered no more disorder, left the room, and started looking for Thornton around 4:50. Meanwhile, Thornton had strolled the North Barracks between 21 o'clock on the 24th and 2 o'clock on Christmas Day, observing the ongoing partying before going to sleep at 2 o'clock. He was awakened by loud yells, and once out of his room was attacked by 2 cadets. Thornton then put Cadet William P.N. Fitzgerald from New York under arrest for brandishing a weapon. Fitzgerald retreated from Thornton and then told 2 cadets in room number 29 about the arrest. At this point, noises erupted from the South Barracks, which distracted Thornton. While going to investigate the commotion, Thornton was knocked out by Roberts, who had been ejected from room number 28 by Hitchcock earlier that evening. Davis was asleep, but the other cadets went looking for Hitchcock. 3 other cadets were discovered by Cadet James G. Overton from Tennessee, a relief centennial and not involved with the parties, and questioned about their action. They gave a drunken explanation about needing a drums and a fife. Around 5 o'clock, Hitchcock found other inebriated cadets wandering the academy. By this point, several window panes had been broken. Hitchcock returned to the room where he was staying, which was room number 8. Several cadets attacked his door. Guyon drawing his pistol and firing a shot into the room. Hitchcock opened the door and yelled at the cadets to stop. The captain then began arresting cadets. Hitchcock ordered Eaton to find Wharton's headquarters. Overton asked Hitchcock to find Thayer, and Hitchcock replied, quote, "No, Mr. Overton, fetch the Commandant Worth here." Several of the other drunken cadets thought Hitchcock had stated the bombardiers would be the ones to quell the riots using heavy weapons, causing several cadets who were not drunk to take up arms in defense of the North Barracks. Thayer had been awoken by 5 o'clock by the sound of drums. He ordered his aide, Patrick Murphy, to get Major Worth because of what he could hear going on in the Northern Barracks. Hitchcock continued restoring order in the Northern Barracks, getting into a fight with Cadet Walter Odie from Virginia. Thornton awoke from the stairway where he had been knocked out and returned to his room. Hitchcock greeted him at his room by 5:45. By 6 o'clock, other cadets who were not drinking were also involved in restoring order. The main rioters were attempting to recruit other cadets, but with no success because they had not been drinking. Overton could not find Cadet Eaton, who was checking on the South Barracks, but did find Major Worth. Hitchcock met Worth and told him what had transpired. By this time, Thayer's aide had arrived in the North Barracks guardroom. The 2nd Artillery had arrived at the North Barracks by the time of Reveille at 6:05. So from 6:05 to 1830. Reveille sounded at 6:05 along with gunfire. The sounding of the breaking glass, profanity by cadets, and cries of pain and threats to Academy officials were all too common. North Barracks residents who were not drunk from the eggnog were appalled by the damaged property. Cadets in the South Barracks were well rested, and other cadets in the North Barracks were disheveled. Some of the cadets remained in their rooms drinking, although some appeared in parade formation despite being drunk. Worth met with Superintendent Thayer after his first formation to discuss what happened in the North Barracks the previous evening. Thayer instructed Worth to get the officers into the North Barracks and restore order. Captain McKay, Academy Quartermaster, took down details of the damages to the property at North Barracks so repairs can take place in the following days. Many cadets who were drunk made it to company roll call at 6:20, though they were subdued. The mutiny official ended when Cadet Captain James A.J. Bradford from Kentucky called the Corps' attention and dismissed them from the mess hall after the breakfast. Chapel formation took place after breakfast, followed by 2 hours of service, with most of the drunk cadets still recovering from their night of drinking. Thayer was advised by Worth regarding the events at the North Barracks. Captain Hitchcock and Lieutenant Thornton were bruised, while 7 cadets suffered from minor injuries, and Fitzgerald suffered a hand injury. Worth told Thayer that between 50 and 90 cadets had been involved in the mutiny. Later that day, met with Gouverneur Kemble, an ordnance manufacturer in Cold Springs, New York, to discuss different items, including the events at West Point. Kemble asked Thayer what he would do about the misconduct, to which Thayer did not know. And the result of this riot, it involved more than 1/3 of the cadets. A subsequent investigation resulted in the implication of 70 cadets and the court-martialing of 20 of them, along with 1 enlisted soldier. Among the participants in the riot, though he was never court-martialed, was future Confederate States President Jefferson Davis. How many of y'all knew about the West Point riots? Because this is something that is not commonly talked about, but this riot was severe enough to cause a hefty damage toll in West Point. And when they talked about the students that were appalled, I'm just picturing generally shaking his head, just totally disappointed at the behavior, because he was the kind of person that would not tolerate that at all. And comment down below, y'all. Do any of y'all like eggnog? Let me know down below. And also, let's talk about gifts, because gifts were also very common around this time, usually under the Christmas tree. Typically in Germany, they would do the thing where they'd leave their shoes out and it would get filled. That also happened in a lot of Dutch countries as well. So they were often modest. They were usually knitted. They were made. They would have simple toys and dolls, hand-carved wood. Germany is known for its artisans and their woodwork. So a lot of Germans know how to get creative with wood and maybe build homemade steins and rocking horses and all that. And dolls are made the same way. Play around this time is also seen as something that is very important, because around this time in Germany, they're starting to celebrate, childhood, and we see a lot of, childhood is a time for children to learn how to play, learn about the real world. So often, young girls were given dolls and boys might be given tools or maybe some, slingshots and stuff like that. And they would also use stockings around this time too in the Victorian era. And they were usually filled with treats like fruits, nuts, or candy. Germany was also known for having the elaborate Christmas markets. Some people even argue that it was Austria. But how many of y'all go to Christmas markets? You know, they're usually held at the first week of December, sometimes the second week. And they're a time for, people to buy items and get stuff that they need for Christmas and, do some shopping. And it's a really nice thing just to get everything done at once. And that was the whole goal of a Christmas market. And it was a great way for artisans to sell their woodwork and, cheesemakers to sell their cheese and other, craftsmen to sell what they made. I just love this portrait, and it looks like General Forrest giving Santa the sword. So let's talk a little bit about England, right? England was also very big into Christmas, and the way that the Victorians celebrated directly impacted America. So one of these ways was, the idea of family getting together for a Christmas meal. So a lot of families get together and they have a meal and they have a delicious, feast. I know some people would celebrate with ham, others would celebrate with a turkey, and they would do parlor games that would have a good time at the family dinner. Definitely have fun with some, little stories around the table, maybe some Christmas stories. And Christmas carols were another way the family had fun. So Christmas carols were also done in the streets, as well as in wealthier homes if there was a piano. Whole family would gather around the piano. The children that knew how to play the piano or a family member would just jam out, and they'd have a great time around it. And around this time, too, again, trees were often well decorated. They were lit with candles, and they would also have special Christmas foods. So how many of y'all know what that cake is called in the middle? That's right. So one of y'all comments plum pudding. That is plum pudding. And every time I say plum pudding, I've had people ask, there's a pudding that tastes like plum? And I face palm and I go, no, plum pudding ain't what you think it is. It's not a custard. Back in the day, puddings were essentially cakes, what we think of as a cake. And it was created around the 14th century, and it was a British traditional dessert. And, it evolved from, plum pottage, which was a runny porridge that was made with dry fruits, meats, and spices, and figgy pudding, which was also a sweet and savory steamed pudding that was very similar. So plum pudding has, it's like a bread pudding more or less, but it's a lot firmer and it has a lot of spices in it. Plum pudding is one of those things where y'all either really love it or y'all don't like it. And I actually like it. It's one of those things where I like it every year, but I could not eat it just randomly. I have to have it at least once for Christmas. All right, and that is it for my presentation, y'all. I hope that y'all enjoyed this. I wanted to add more, but it was a tough week, so I'm going to do the second part next week, and we're going to continue this on until Christmas. We will also be we're going to be doing a read aloud, the Confederate Night Before Christmas, which will be probably on Christmas Day, not Christmas Day, the 24th, Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, we're doing our read aloud again, so I hope everyone will enjoy that. And please share this video. It will be part of our Christmas series on some cool Christmas history for our History Night. Well, I want to wish each and every one of y'all a fantastic day. I hope everyone has a wonderful week. And for those that might be away for for Christmas time, y'all have a Merry Christmas. See y'all soon. Y'all stay Southern and Deo Vindice.